updated for the current year's changes or the upcoming year's changes.
Okay.
So might as well get the training on our video updated. All right, here we go. Share. Um, okay, there we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. So once again, welcome everybody to a exciting class of learning about finances and numbers. I am your third district treasurer elect. I'll be the treasurer for the 25-27 fiscal year. I've been treasurer before. I've been a unit treasurer. I've been a council treasurer. So I've got a lot of treasurer background. So what we're going to be learning about today is basically your essential financial operations. What you need to know to be able to financially run your PTA unit correctly and with the responsibility to your members. So we're going to be talking about the records you keep, how to develop budgets, how to prepare reports, your transaction management forms, the workman's compensation form, and then also handling some common financial situations that PTAs find themselves in. Oh, okay. Uh, I think, okay, this slide we're going to skip because this slide forgot to take out. That's for another time later on. Um, so the records that you guys keep a lot of records between you and the secretary. You guys keep all the records for your PTA. Of course, the treasurer keeps more of the financial records than the secretary does, but you also have to keep some of the other non-financial related documents too, like your copy of your bylaws and your your IRS letter of determination, that is a financial record. Um um Anything real, your bank statements and everything financial related, plus your bylaws. And oh, and by the way, if you have a question, you need me to stop or go over something again, either raise your hand or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question, or put the question in the chat. And Tom Nelson, who's our current president, he will be monitoring the chat and he will stop me if he sees a question in the chat. So, developing a budget. This is always a challenge for most units because a budget is, yes, you do need to follow a budget, but a budget is an estimate. You have no magic crystal ball knowing exactly how much your Chipotle fundraiser is going to do or how much money you're going to earn from your dance-a-thon. There's no way to predict it. I mean, you could have an awesome fundraiser, or you could have a dismal fundraiser, or you could, if you're buying stuff for your school, it could be like super uber expensive, or you might be able to find a really good deal. So there's just no way to predict it. So when you develop a budget, you're just using your best guess based on either historical knowledge of what you've done in the past or what you think will happen in the future. I know people are upset about the tariffs and everything. Tariffs are affecting some things that PTAs use, not everything. So you have to take that into account if you think that the things you're buying will be affected by the tariffs. But I really strongly encourage you to look at past events, especially those annual events you do every year. Look at the records for what everything cost last year. and how much money you earned if it was a fundraising type activity, and maybe bump up everything by 5%. So, bump up the expenses by 5% just to give yourself a little buffer, or 10% if you think you're going to be using a lot of things that are affected by tariffs. So, but when in your budget, you just have to just take your best guess at your program expense projections, look at your past budgets, your income, your expenditures, estimate possible income from all your sources like donations or fundraisers or sponsorships or spiritware sales, or whatever it is you're doing for your income. And then just like I said, take your best guess on, the increase. Um, Also, when you're developing a budget, you're developing it obviously for um, the coming year. So you're probably, unless you're doing this over the summer, you're when the fiscal year closes on June 30th, I mean, you probably are not doing a lot of spending at the end of the year. Maybe you are. Maybe you're doing like a big end of the year bash or something like that. I know a lot of PTAs do. Some PTAs start winding everything down, so they're not spending a lot of money at the end of the year. At the end of the year, so it just depends on how you function. So you have to estimate your because that's the money you're going to have for sure that you have. It's black and white and in concrete. This is the money you're going to have to start the next year with. And then also when you're developing a budget, put a budget line item in there with whatever money you can afford or you think you might need. Call it unallocated reserve or just some generic name. So if you have a budget line item that maybe, ooh, okay, we're going to be overspending this, you can dip into that unallocated reserve to help to pay for that overage. Then you're not scrambling to restructure your whole budget to find money to pay for that overage. Okay, and these are the recommended budget line items. They're not in concrete. It's totally up to you and how you want to structure your finances, because you have to track everything using these budget line items too. So you have your carryover funds. That's the money you're going to start the year with. Donations. Okay, throw donations on it. If you have families or maybe businesses that are very generous, throw donations line in. If your PTA never ever gets donations, don't worry about putting that line in there. Um, Fundraise your income, obviously, and then have a in your we're going to get to the actual structure of of the budget here in a few slides. But for anything you're raising money for, there's usually an expense for it. Do you know the old saying you have to spend money to make money? Okay, so that holds true. So if you have a dance-a-thon and you're hoping to raise $1,000, okay, but you're gonna have, maybe water for the kids. Yeah, so they'll be dancing, they'll be working up a sweat, they'll get thirsty, so they'll need water. So you need to buy a case of water. Maybe they'll get hungry because they're burning off all the energy. So now you gotta buy snacks. And so all those expenses that go into your fundraiser. And then there's the insurance expense. If you know what the insurance premium is for the coming year, go ahead and put that exact number in. If you don't know it yet, because we usually don't know the insurance premium until late fall, just throw in $300. That is more than enough. That insurance will never be more than $300 in my mind. I hope not. Um, but always over budget. And then when you find out what the exact number is, then you can revise your budget dollar down. And then your membership per capita. This is the funds not belonging to you. So say for instance your dues are $10. You know that if you're a totem user or if you write checks for to third district for your dues or do both, you know that not all $10 of that stays with your PTA. Um, this year, $5 of it came to the different levels of PTA. Next year, because national PTAs raised their dues went by $1, it'll be six. So that's $6. It's $5 this year, but it'll be $6 next year. That is called membership uh per capita. That's funds not belonging to you. That money does not belong to you. Even though you've collected it if you're doing the cash membership um situation, Totem automatically doesn't route that $6 to your account. It only puts the $4 in your account. So you don't have to budget for Totem for that. But if you're collecting cash dues, then make sure you set aside that $6 because that money will not stay with your PTA. And then membership dues income is at $4. That's the money that does stay with your PTA. And then the membership dues expense is the $6 that you sent on the third district. And then you can throw in a line item if you want for membership drive expense. Maybe you do buying membership envelopes or making copies of flyers, or maybe you do a welcome back to school thing, and there's a member you're having parents sign up the first day of school when they're dropping their kids off. Whatever you consider a membership expense. And then there's a PTA operations expense, such as postage, because you're going to be mailing. If you're a PTA that collects cash dues, you're going to be mailing checks to us. You're going to be maybe you're going to be mailing your your Attorney General RRF1 uh down to the Attorney General's office. So you're going to need to use some postage. And then mailing envelopes. You got if you're going to be using postage, you got to put that postage on something, right? And then some PTAs, if they have the money, they will buy printer ink for their officers. This is especially true where schools will not permit their PTAs to use their copy machines. So that could be an operation expense too. Either the officers could be, using their own printer ink to make copies, or you're going to Staples or Kinko's or something to make copies of your flyers. So make sure you have that expense budgeted in. Also there's staff, volunteer, teacher appreciation expense, whatever you call it. Um, some PTAs just focus on teachers. Some do teachers and staff, like the gal that works in the office and the school nurse and the bus drivers and um the attendance clerk and then some PTAs do all of it. They do their staff, the teachers, and all the people that volunteer. So depending on what you do, make sure you've got those expenses um estimated. And then training workshops.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a
oh,
question in the
yeah.
chat. Um, why is there two line items for the membership per capita and then the membership expense with the $6 again?
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah. I kind of did breeze over that kind of fast. Oh, yes, you're right. Oh, no, okay, yeah. One is a membership dues expense. That's funds not belonging to unit. That's the $6 per member. And the other line is the membership drive. It's the cost to get people to to attract them to become members. I know that those look very similar, so I can totally see how that would be confusing. So sorry for that. Does that answer your question?
See, that question was from Ashley. So Ashley, if you
Okay.
want to unmute yourself, if the
Yeah, no problem. It's
Okay.
actually the line above the membership drive expense. So you have it under membership per capita will be $6 per member. Then two more down it says memberships dues expense. That also says will be $6 per member.
Hmm. Oh. Oh no, the other one. Okay, this one here, this bullet up here in the kind of in the middle of the slide, that's the income. This one's the income, and this is the
Okay,
expense.
so they cancel each other out.
Yeah, right.
Okay, that makes more sense now. Thank you.
Sorry. Yes. Good question. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, budget approval. So now you've done all this work to create this beautiful budget, and you have to get it approved. So there are different budgets for different situations. Um, toward after you've had your election, at the end of the year, the board elect should develop a small contingency. It's called a contingency budget, and that's to be approved by your members. Um, that will get you money to start the next year with, because you're not going to be getting your next year's budget approved until your first association meeting of the new school year. So there's gonna be a month or maybe two, depending on when your first association meeting is, that you can get your in this particular case, the 25-26 budget approved. So if you do something at the beginning of the school year, like welcome back parents, on the first day of school, you don't have any authority to spend money because you haven't got an approved budget yet. So if you create this small contingency budget, just enough money to get you through until your main budget is approved for the next fiscal year, then you can spend money on the first day of school. So you get that budget approved, and then you also have those funds released. And we're going to be talking about release of funds here in just a second. So this first bullet, it talks about that contingency bullet. And then the second bullet is the full year budget, which is basically um it's basically a revision of your contingency budget, or you can just say this is a whole new budget. Depends on how you want to word it. Um but the contingency budget, um obviously if you spend money, then that's less money you have to start with when you're planning your full budget. So you have to take that into account. And then, but adoption of any budget does not uh, give you the approval to spend money. Just because you have a budget doesn't mean you're okay to spend money. So that's where the releasing of funds process comes in. And we'll be talking about that in just a second.
let's see, a question in the chat. Does the contingency budget have to be approved by the association or just quorum by the board?
It should be approved by the association. And I know we're getting towards the end of the school year now, so probably many of you have already had your last association meeting of the year. Um, but you could call a a special association meeting. It'd be like 5 or 10 minutes. You could do it over Zoom. Um, just say we just need it for 5 to 10 minutes just to approve this contingency budget. And then you get everybody to approve it, and then you're good to go. Does that answer? I've actually walked a couple of units through that. They had to call. They called special meetings, and I was present at that meeting to explain to the members what was going on because they were a fairly new PTA. So I was there to support that PTA in helping to explain why people were being called back for that special 5-minute meeting. Any question? Or does that answer your question?
Yeah, see, there is a question, how many people in the association have to be at that emergency meeting?
It's just like a regular association meeting. So whatever your quorum is in your bylaws for your association meeting, that's what also has to be at that special meeting too.
And it's, isn't the most common number in the bylaws for the quorum of the association, isn't 11?
Yeah, that's the most common one. Depending on how many officers you have, it could be a little higher. If you have a lot of elected officers, it might be like up to 13, but look at whatever your bylaws say. But 11 is the absolute minimum you can have. But it's all dependent on your bylaws. So don't just say, oh, well, their district said you only need 11 people. No, that's the common one, but you have to do whatever your bylaws say.
Hmm.
Any other questions?
Well, I think yeah, in the bylaws it answers it. So in the chat, she said, if we have 50 members, but only 10 show up to the association meetings, do we count quorum? So in that case, because the lowest is
11.
11, then you wouldn't actually have a legal association meeting if
Right.
10 people show up to the association meeting.
I mean, most people can, show up on Zoom for a 5-minute meeting.
Yeah,
It's not like you're asking for an hour or 2 hours.
yeah, and actually also something that I've come across that people weren't perhaps confused about is they thought that you had to have quorum throughout the entire meeting. There have been times I've attended meetings where they've been, haven't actually had quorum. So to get quorum, they would call on their cell phone to
Yeah,
somebody and have somebody say, basically, you're a member of the PTA, yeah. Are you, basically checking in so we can count you for quorum? And they said, yeah. And they go, okay, fine. That's one more person. Okay, we meet quorum. And then the person can hang up.
yeah, exactly.
Uh, so there are kind of, it's not, of course, not ideal. But uh, that is one way to kind of work the requirement of having quorum. If people just can call on literally for 2 minutes and then hang up.
Yeah,
Once you meet quorum, then that quorum is good for the entire meeting.
right. Thank you for bringing that up, Tom. Any other questions?
Yep, I don't see any other questions in the chat right now.
Okay. Amending the budget. So usually, yeah, because when you first come up with your budget, it is really throwing a dart at a dartboard. You really have no idea what's going to happen, how much, money you're going to make, how much things are going to cost. So usually by about midway through the year, about January, you have a better idea of what your financial picture is looking like. So, usually at your January, February-ish meeting, whenever your association meetings occur, you should have your look at your look at your budget before that meeting and say, okay, how are we doing? Do we need to bump up this category, or have we already? Boy, we budgeted $5,000 for the dance-a-thon, and it happened, but we only used 3,000. So we've got $2,000 left in this budget line item that we're not going to use for anything else because we already had the dance-a-thon. So can we put that $2,000 somewhere else? So you just have all these discussions and make the budget a little bit more realistic, and then you come into your association meeting in January, February timeframe and say, okay, this budget is now closer to reality. So, and then you have them approve that budget. Any questions on that? And then that is also something that's done at the association meeting that you need quorum for. Okay. This is an ancient. I wish Capta would update this 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 example because it's so freaking ancient. But this is a sample of a budget where you got your, if you have a bank account that earns interest, you got interest income, you got your membership dues income, your fundraising income, and you can list your fundraisers separately. And then there's a receipt not belonging to you. That's the $6 that does not belong to you. And then all your estimated expenses. And I do the one thing I like about this budget template is the way they've got the income and expenses categorized. And because the um the CT TR1 form with the Attorney General that I don't think we're covering in this slide deck because it's more of a tax related. I think that's in the tax workshop slide deck. But the CT TR1 fundraising income is, um, what your cash income is. So it likes everything broken out. Same with the expenses. It wants to know what your program expenses were, what your, all these different expenses were. So I like the fact that it's separated out like that because that will make filling out that CTTR1 form so much easier. And if you're interested in looking at what the CTTR1 form is I'm talking about, you can go on our website on our YouTube channel and check out the tax workshop video. Okay. I got really ahead of myself here. All right. So this is the mechanism I was referring to earlier with releasing of funds. So just because you have an approved budget doesn't mean you can go out and spend money willy-nilly. So your association must approve the release of funds. So ideally, see, this is where having a calendar comes in really handy. So if your PTA has some kind of a planning calendar for the year, like when you're gonna have your jogathon, when you're gonna have your teacher appreciation day, when you're gonna have your back to school night, when you're gonna have your readathon, when you're gonna have um your your science night, all these different things. If you have it on a calendar, then when you're looking at your budget, you can match up your budget line items or everything on your calendar so you can plan ahead to when you're going to need the money available so you can spend the money on those expenses. Um, so ideally, it's best if funds are released for programs and activities that are held between the date of the association meeting that you're voting on that release of funds to the date of the next association meeting. So if you're looking at your calendar, you got a big calendar on the wall, right? And you see, oh, we got 3 things going on. And our next association meeting is I don't know, January 8th. But you've got this thing that you're doing in December before winter break. You got to order the stuff for. So, or no, I'm sorry, take that back. You're doing an event in on January 31st, and which is right after your January association meeting. And so you're thinking to yourself, wow, we need to start ordering stuff for this January 31st event, like in a couple months in advance. So you can't wait for your January association meeting to release the funds because it'll be too late. So go ahead and release those funds at your fall meeting so you can spend the money, even though that event is actually occurring after your next association meeting. So release any money you think you're going to be spending between your association meetings, not when the events are happening. So I really, really, really recommend having a calendar in front of you when it comes down to planning out when to ask for different money to be released. Um, so because the budget is an estimate, uh, you shouldn't release all the funds for the activities for the entire year because your budget includes an estimate of your fundraising income, and you don't know what your income is going to be. So if you're planning to spend, $1,000 on an event, and you don't know if you're going to have $1,000 in your bank account, then you're kind of screwed. Now, if you have a very small budget, if you're a very small PTA, very small school, and you don't handle a lot of money, or maybe you don't do a lot of activities, um, you could get away with just releasing your entire budget for the whole year and having your members approve the entire thing. And then you don't have to keep. We need to have $50 approved or released for this event. Just go ahead and just do it all one big glob. If you're a small school or have a PTA that does not have many activities. So it just depends on your situation. Any questions about releasing funds? I know that's can be a very confusing topic. Nothing? Okay, well, keep moving. So the treasurer report. So as a treasurer, you must prepare a monthly report for each bank account that you have. So if you have your checking account, and maybe you're a PTA that has a ton of money and you got a savings account too, you have to also prepare a treasurer report for your savings account. So every account you have, you need to report the money that's in those accounts. Your treasury report must include the beginning and ending balance for that period covered. I recommend that whatever period that your bank statements are, that your treasury report matches those periods because it's just cleaner that way. List any deposits and where the money came from. Like, membership money or dance-a-thon fundraiser or Joe Schmo's garage donation. Just have to be doesn't have to be a long description, just a couple words, just so people know what it's from. Also list the checks and payments that were made and a brief description of those. So if you write, check 1006 for $100, just write who the check was payable to and what it was for. The check was written to Sally Smith to reimburse her for the Jogathon hot dogs.
There is a question in the chat of what
Yeah.
would savings account be used for?
Pardon me, what was the question?
What would a savings account be used for?
Um, There are some, there are not many, but there are a few PTAs that have a ton of money. And so they choose to keep their basically operating money in their checking account so they can write checks and do their thing. And then they have the excess money, like their emergency fund, if you will, or if they're saving money for a big project, um, like maybe they're buying their school marquee or buying playground equipment or something a very large expense. So they will save that, keep that money that they've been accumulating in a savings account, so it doesn't get accidentally spent with their general operating money. Doesn't happen very often. It's very rare, but there are a couple of PTAs that do have a savings account. Good question. Thank you. Um, and then under the treasure, where you have the list of deposits and a list of things you paid for, then have a list of expenses that are to be ratified by your association and your board. Your board has to ratify, and also your association has to ratify. So basically, it's just a very summarized list. Basically, it's a list of everything that's in um or section or paragraph 3, but you just don't need to put all the descriptions and stuff because you already described it um in line 3. So you just, instead of writing check 106 to Sally Smith, you just write check 106 in the list to be ratified. Um and then I lost my train of thought. Um so then when somebody motion, so you do not have to, oh, that's the other thing. You do not have to have your treasurer report approved. Only the ratified expenses must be voted on and ratified. So the difference between approved and ratified, because I've heard this question a lot too. Approved is something that's prior to spending the money. So you approve a budget. You approve of somebody going out and spending, um, going to Costco and buying muffins for the teacher appreciation. Ratifying is something that's already happened. You're basically, it's an acknowledgement. So you can't, once the check is written, it's written. And it was written because the funds were released, which authorized the PTA to spend that, to write that check. So basically, this list of expenses with the money that's gone out is the word ratification is just something that you've shown your members a list of all the checks that you wrote, and they're ratifying it, which means that they're acknowledging that you have shared this list with them. But the ratification is the same process as the voting. Somebody has to motion to approve, check 110 to 118 plus, any bank charges or anything that doesn't have a number. You have to itemize everything in the motion. So you can do a range as long as there's no break in the range. So if every check is cleared between 101 and 105, you can say you can have a motion to ratify check 101 through 105.
Okay.
Then if you
Question
have bank,
just to clarify
yeah,
that the question is, so the ratification does have to be motioned?
yes.
Yes.
Just the ratification of expenses has to be voted on. The treasury report as a whole, like where you're reporting 1, 2, and 3 on this list. That does not have to be approved or ratified. Just four has to be voted on as a ratification. And then if you're unable to attend the board meeting or association meeting as treasurer, maybe you're sick or maybe you're out of town or you know something has happened, you got a conflict, you still have to submit your treasurer report. Just email it to your president or the secretary or somebody on the board so it can be reported for you. And then the difference in the treasurer reports between your board meetings and the association meetings are your board meetings because your board meets monthly, so you have to have a monthly treasurer report for your board. Now, depending on if your PTA meets has monthly association meetings or maybe you just meet in I don't know August and January and March and April, you know, maybe for a year, then you have to approve or ratify the expenses and report. The treasurer's report must capture everything that's happened between association meetings. So if you only have four association meetings a year, maybe there's 3 months between each association meeting. Your treasurer report has to capture that 3 months worth of data. So basically, you can just take your monthly board treasurer report and just copy and paste everything into one bigger report that you present to your association.
So, clarification in the chat.
Huh?
It is basically like we are approving the expenses twice. Once to approve to pay the expense, then another to approve the treasurer's reporting the expenses were paid.
Yes, that is exactly right.
Yeah.
That just closes the loop. You know, your members said, yeah, go spend the money. And now you have to report, yep, we spent the money.
Mhm. Yeah, although the first approval of the expenses is like I think you mentioned previously, kind of unknown because the prices can change um, before you actually get to the store and then find out that the price changed. And then you have to write a check for or pay a different amount than was actually approved, which is
Right.
frequently why when I often hear that before in the budget they will say we approve spending up to or not more than $200 for this event. So they usually overestimate it. And then when the bill actually comes in, then they approve the expense that was really only $180.
Exactly. So you have to be very strategic with your voting so you don't get yourself into trouble.
Yeah, so that's a good way to put it. She put it in the chat. It's approving a guesstimate and then approving the actual.
Right, right. Okay. Excellent questions.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
she asked what, or then there's a question of what happens if the receipt comes back over.
Um, over the what the
I guess over what was originally approved as the budget. So if they say we approve spending no more than $200 on this item, and then the bill comes back that it was $210, or say an event had, she gives an example. Say an event had $200 for food, more people show up, so 250 was used.
right. Um, I would I would just, if things happen, you have no control over it, like the example about more people showing up than you anticipated. Um, go ahead and spend the extra. as long as you've got a way to justify it to your members, like, yeah, I know you approved us only spending up to $200, but 50 more people showed up that we didn't anticipate, so we had to accommodate that. And that's why we had to spend a little bit more. And then just adjust your revise your budget to capture that overage.
Yeah, so I guess you're putting your trust that that the board or the association will basically trust that you're doing this in good faith and that so it has to do with a good relationship of trust between you and those that have control of the expenses.
Yeah, as long as you can explain it to your members, um, you know, and the overage is reasonable. Like if you go over by $1,000, that could be a little hard to explain. Um, but if you only go over by $100 or a couple $100, and you have a good reason why, because more people showed up, or because the items, the price went up at the last minute, and so and we had to buy the same amount so we could make sure we fed everybody or gave everybody the all the materials or the goodies or whatever. Um, and people are usually understanding as long as you explain it to them.
Yeah, so asks, does anything special, for example, a vote, need to happen at the meeting? Um,
I mean, there's no such thing as over voting. If you want, if you're just feel out your members, if you think your members would be more comfortable with getting it on the record as a vote that they're I guess essentially ratifying because you already spent the money, um, the overage, then go ahead and vote. If everybody seems to be okay with it, then just make sure it's documented in the minutes that, the explanation for the overage was reported, and that way it's at least in the minutes and you don't need to vote. It just depends on the temperature of your members.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah. Oh, okay. She says thank you. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. And here's a treasure report sample. This is a horrific sample because it doesn't have the ratification on here anywhere. There should be the list of things to ratify. The list of things to ratify should be on here. Or I guess worst comes to worst, you could just say, you could just use your list of expenses and ask people to ratify that. So in this example here, let me make it bigger. So if someone was to ratify just this, if this expense here, the motion would be to ratify check 3150 uh and 3151, and then check 3153 through check 3159. You see, because the 3152 is missing. So that's a break in the sequence. And then do a so the motion is to approve ratify checks 3150 through 3151, then checks 3153 through 3159, plus the December 10th bank fee, plus the December 13th transfer to savings. So that would all be in the motion. So you basically just read out loud what's in the list. So I suppose you could do it that way too, and just make sure that it's documented in the minutes correctly. All right. On to the next thing. Let me make this a little smaller so it's not quite so, whoop, that's way too big. Or it's too small. All right. So there's another report that it's not required, but it's just a nice thing to have because it helps PTAs manage their money better. It's called a budget tax sales report. So this is a sample from an old third district budget. So this is not going to have any reality to um how your PTAs have budget line items. But I wanted to draw your attention to the two columns to the right side, where it says 2021 budget and then actuals as of 6/30/22. So um you self-explanatory. You whatever you have your approved budget that goes in the left side or the left side dollar column, and then as you spend money and you can put the different thing or you earn money, you put it in the appropriate line item, and then that's part of your actuals. So this gives you an at a glance view of, oh boy, we're getting really close to spending all of our budget. Maybe we should revise that budget line item, give us some more money because we have some more things to buy. Or, gee, um, this fundraiser is doing a lot better than we anticipated, so maybe we should bump up this fundraiser line item. Or, wow, we didn't spend hardly any of the money that we planned on this activity. We budgeted $1,000, but we only spent 200. So why don't we revise this down 800 and put that 800 somewhere else? So this gives you a really good high level snapshot of how your PTA is performing financially and helps your keep your money in balance for where it needs to be. And then this is the okay, this is the income part. And then here's the expenses part. So we always like I said, this is third district's budget, so there's a lot of categories in here that would never apply to you, but just using it as example. And then at the bottom you put when your budget was approved, and you put when the board approved it and when it. And if you revise it, if this was a revision, then you would say a revision approved on April 23rd. All right, this is where I go back to the tracking for the CTTR1 form, which we're not gonna really get into much tonight. I just wanted to mention it because it's helpful to set up your budget in a way that makes filling out this form so much easier because it's kind of a painful form to fill out, in my opinion. Um, and if you're not tracking your money efficiently, they'll make that form even more painful to fill out.
There is a question
Yeah.
in chat about what if our treasurer's reports have not been this detailed?
Then they are what they are. Um, there's no good format or bad format. All I've offering is recommended formats. Whatever works for whatever your treasurer works for your treasurer and conveys the information to your members in a way that they can understand, then that that's fine. That's fine for your PTA.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you have your budget or your treasury report, your expenses, everything, if you have them set up to kind of mirror what the CTTR1 is looking for, that'll make filling out that form a ton easier.
Yeah, and I guess it's also kind of or between the treasurer and those that are getting the information. if those that are getting the information want more detail, then I guess they can ask questions, right, during the treasurer's
Right.
report. So then that could be, maybe the next time the treasurer will say, oh, they wanted this sort of detail, so maybe in the next month the treasurer would provide some additional details. So it's I guess just kind of working it out between the treasurer and those that are the information is being presented to.
Right. Yeah, there is no right or wrong way, but you need to have a report that at least shows that you're handling the PTA money responsibly, and that you're able to answer questions if your members ask, like, what's that? What's that $5,000 you spent on? I mean, it's just you can't just say we spent $5,000. It's like unless you did spend it on one activity. If you spend on four activities, then you need to break it out so your members can understand it. Um, like I said, I'm not going to go into the actual TR1 form tonight. It'll be at the tax workshop, but I just want to give you a quick overview of what the TR1 form is asking for, so you can think about it when you're coming up with next year's budget. So, it will ask you for a total of cash contributions, which is anything like the dues that stay with your PTA, any cash donations that individuals, parents, businesses, anybody makes, um, and the value of, like, if somebody donates a gift card or gift certificate for a raffle prize, or they donate a gift card so you can buy stuff for um, Teacher Appreciation Week or something. Gift cards and gift certificates are considered cash because they are redeemable like cash. So, which we'll get to in a minute about the buying of gift cards. That's a whole nother subject, but it's very similar. Um, because they're treated like cash, that's why they're counted as cash contributions. And then the total of non-cash contributions. So this is something I know a lot of PTAs are not good at tracking because it's still a fairly new requirement. But if you have a raffle or and you get companies, businesses to donate raffle prizes, or if you parents donate, like for the jogathon, if a parent donates a case Costco or something, that's a tangible item. That's you can touch it, you can feel it, you can consume it. Um, those are called non-cash contributions, and you must report the value of those contributions on the TR1 form. So keep a separate spreadsheet. If you're treasurer, keep a separate spreadsheet of the value. The values are determined by the donor, or if the person gives you the actual receipt, like that parent that went out and bought that case of water. If they show you the receipt, then you can put, oh, okay, that water, the value of that water is exactly $5.27 because that's how much that parent spent on it. But if the donation does not have a receipt, then you just ask the donor what the value is, and if the donor doesn't know what the value is, then you just use fair market value. So just estimate, like look in a Target shopping ad, or and then if it's a used item, look at eBay or something. Try and get a close approximation. But it doesn't have to be down to the penny. It can be total estimation. And then program income is program from events that are. Oh, let me finish. I'll get to your question here in just a second, Marissa. Program income is events that are not advertised as a fundraiser, yet you do still make a little bit of money on it. So the intent of that activity is not to make money. It's like a family night or something. but you do make a little money because you have a concession stand that you sell snacks or something like that. Yes, Marissa, what's your question?
I'm just kind of trying to circle back on the non-cash contributions. Do they,
Yeah, yeah.
'cause we hold like at our winter breakfast, we hold a raffle. So parents donate to their teachers and each teacher puts together a basket. Um, I have no way of knowing which parents, I mean, I guess I can kind of estimate the value on each item, but does that count against our income at all, or how does that, just wondering what the reason is for that part.
Um, I'm trying to think if that would, if the parents are, let's see, the parents are donating the items to the teacher, and then the teacher makes a basket, and then the basket gets donated to the PTA. Is that how I'm understanding it?
Yeah, and then it gets raffled off at the
Okay, okay, gotcha. Um, yeah, just use your best guess. If it looks like a basket's worth $50, you don't have to like, how much is this pencil? How much, just $25. Like, okay, it's worth $25 or $30 or $50 or just take your best guess. That's all we can ask. Nobody's gonna ask you to justify how you came up with that number. But you should, yeah, and on that for that raffle, just have a list. I don't know what's the activity called for the raffle?
it's for like a winter breakfast that we do.
Okay. So just have a spreadsheet, call it winter raffle, uh basket list, and then put Mrs. Sawyer's basket, Mr. Brown's basket, and then just put a dollar value after it. You don't have to itemize everything in it. Just say basket, Mrs. Sawyer's basket's worth $20. Mr. Brown's basket's worth $30. Um, Miss Sweeney's basket's worth $50. Just really ballpark it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, this is this 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 uh this always trips up a lot of PTAs because when it comes to filling out the CT Tier 1 form in November, now they have to think about what happened last year. It's like, let's see. So your treasurer, your treasurer is sitting there, it's like, gee, we did 2 raffles. Oh yeah, we did that jogathon and the parent donate. So at least if you keep a running list of all the donations, line item on the CTTR1 form will be a heck of a lot easier. Because you can't think back to what happened 9 months ago. Program income, like I said, it's income from events that were not intended to be a fundraiser, but you still made a little bit of money anyway. And special event income is gross income from fundraisers, silent auctions, raffles, etc. And then other revenue could be grants and sponsorships, although that could be argued that that is a cash contribution because grants and sponsorships are basically a check that you get, which is cash. So you could put the grants and sponsorship money in either the cash contribution category or you could just list it as other revenue. But keep in mind, if you put anything in the other revenue or other expense, um, anything with the word other in front of it, you have to also submit with that CTTR1 form an itemization of what is encompassed in that other, like other category. So yeah, it's a lot of paperwork. It's that's why I say it's a horrific form. And so everything you can do to make it easier to fill out is will save your sanity. Um, then there's the 5-minute financial review, which is basically balancing the checkbook. That's all it really is. It's just looking at the checks you wrote, seeing what's cleared, what hasn't cleared. Make sure all the deposits that were made are all recorded, and make sure everything matches. And so it's basically just balancing the checkbook. And then if if things are not matching up, if it's like, okay, we have a lot of withdrawals, but I don't have the actual, I don't have the check or, the ATM withdrawal slip. I don't know, where's this money disappearing to? Then you need to ask questions. And if it looks like something kind of weird is going on, and you can't explain where the money is missing, uh, if you have any concerns, then contact our office, and we will help you try to get to the bottom of it. Hopefully, it's not something nefarious, um, that we need to do a police report and all that ugliness for, but hopefully it's just something simple. But if you have any concerns, just contact our office and we will help you. Additional checks and balances. So PTA is all about making sure everything's transparent and everything is above board and everything it has been accounted for. So that's why PTA requires all checks to be signed by 2 authorized check signers. Even if your bank does not require it, even if your bank does not check to see if there's 2 signatures, you still need 2 signatures. And a financial reviewer will be checking that. Also, it's ideal to have your monthly bank statements reviewed by a non-check signer. And then have that person that's looking at the bank statement just initial the bank statement or sign it or something indicating that they looked at it. This is just another way, just another check and balance, to make sure that questionable transactions like bank errors or unexpected bank fees or unusual transactions are identified and addressed. We had a PTA one time several years ago. The treasurer was a transition. The new treasurer was elected and starting her job, and she got the bank statements from the previous treasurer, and she got them and she looked at them and she's like, why is there a couple of charges for $200 at Red Hawk Casino? So had the bank statements, that would have been caught a lot sooner. Because it could be something like the account was, hacked into, and someone's debit card got stolen, and I would never make the first assumption that the treasurer did something bad, because banks are hacked all the time. So it could be that there's just somebody's uh card number got hacked into and somebody went on a spending spree. So it's just best to have somebody come and check the bank statements to make sure everything is accounted for and compare it to the treasurer report. So that's what this individual would take the bank statement, compare it to the treasurer report, and make sure everything is on the bank statement is reflected on the treasurer report. Also financial review. Okay, this is actually a new requirement. It used to be the financial reviews must be done twice a year. Now it's just recommended that they're done twice a year, but they must be done at least once a year. I still strongly recommend the twice a year review though, because it's a good way to catch mistakes before they become huge problems. But now you no longer have to do 2 reviews per year. annual financial report. This is basically the summary of where all your money came from, where all your income came from, and where all your money went out to. And this is actually the form that you'll use when you fill out the CTTR1 form. So if your treasury reports can be aligned so you can summarize everything real easily, like that treasury report I showed you from an old third district treasury report where I had the budget in one column and the actuals in another column. That would be, that will serve as an annual financial report too. And this is done at the end of the year after the books are closed. So this is a final summary of all the money and what happened to it that fiscal year. So I really recommend that this report be prepared to make the CTTR1 form easier to fill out. Otherwise, the treasurer has to go through every treasurer report and add everything up, which makes it more painful. I'm trying to make less pain for you because you guys have enough to do with this job without having to go through a lot of paperwork over and over again. Payment authorization form. This form you should be using anytime you are reimbursing somebody for something, or if they if they got an advance approved, there's another form for advance. You can advance if somebody said, "Oh, I'll go to Costco and buy the $200 worth of stuff." But I don't have $200 in my bank account to pay for it out of pocket and then wait for a reimbursement check. So can you, advance me the $200 and then I'll go buy the stuff with that $200 and I'll give you the change if there is any change. So that's kind of where this is tracked, because on the form here, uh it's got how much was claimed, what the expenditures were for, and if the person received it in advance, um, then they would put the advance there, and everything should balance out. So either if the individual was given a $200 advance and they only spent $150, then this last line here, the refund to PTA, will say $50, and then the individual should be expected to give a check or cash back to the PTA in the amount of $50. If the person spent more than the $200 that they were told to spend, um, that goes back to the earlier question about what happens if it's more expensive than what was approved. This is if they got an advance. Okay, I got $200 advance, but they actually cost $225. So they list the expenditures, minus the advance received, which is $200, and then the reimbursement claimed, because there's a $25 difference. Then on that reimbursement claim, they would say $25, and then that's how much the PTA owed to the individual. And then down here at the bottom is where all the where the particular where all the particulars about if it was a membership approved activity, if the funds were released by the membership, if the executive board approved it, and then if a check was written to the individual, um, then the check number would be written here, the budget category the money was paid out of, if the person received an advance, and the amount of advance would go here, and how much that individual is owed if they spent more than they were given.
Okay, let's see, we have both a hand raised and a question in the chat, but
Okay.
the question in the chat, and I believe that the only people that are allowed to be check signers are officers that were elected by the association. Is that correct?
Yes and no. Only check signers can only be officers that are elected. That is correct. But but your secretary is elected and they are not allowed to be a check signer. That's in your bylaws. It says it very plainly. Your secretary is never allowed to be a check signer. There's a section in your bylaws that says who the approved check signers are. It's usually the president, the treasurer, and usually a VP or maybe a VP, vice president, maybe somebody else. If you have four check signers, but just check your bylaws. And if you need to revise your bylaws because you need to update that list of who's allowed, then let's get your bylaws revised. But
And,
whatever your bylaws say, that's who's approved to be on your check account.
and I also understand, even though the principal is on the executive board, because the principal is not elected, the principal cannot be a check signer.
Right, right.
Okay, and then let's see, let's see, Chandra, I think. Do
Yes.
you want to unmute yourself and ask your question or
Uh,
make your
I have,
comment?
I have a question about payment authorization forms. So, we had we tie up with a gift shop, and we made fundraisers in the November. So, do we need to fill the payment authorization form for that or not?
Okay, I thought I followed you and then I didn't follow you. So I heard the gift shop and what was the
We tie up with a gift shop and made a fundraiser in the November holiday season.
okay.
Do we need to fill the payment authorization form for that when we reimbursement?
Um if somebody bought if somebody went and purchased items for your gift shop,
They donated some toys
oh,
and sorry, it's not donated. They give us before toys and we sell in our winter wonderland and we made some profit.
mhm.
So do we need to fill when we reimbursement some amount for the toys? Do we need to fill the payment authorization form when we reimbursement them?
Yeah, if they request to be reimbursed, yes, you should fill out a form. And then if they have a receipt or some kind of documentation about what they purchased, that should be stapled to this form.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have a questions about some compensation, workers' compensation.
Hmm.
So is that a right time to ask?
Yeah, actually I think we're getting close to the workman's compensation slide. And shoot, and I think we're coming up on time here too.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, I'll wait until
yeah,
then.
there's a workman's compensation slide though, but if I don't cover your question, then go ahead and ask it then.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. 'Cause I just saw how late it's getting, and I actually have a 9 o'clock appointment. So and I know nobody wants to be up at 9 o'clock looking at financial stuff. This is just a sample of the financial report that I already talked about. Oh wait, I already did all this. Okay. Cash verification form. This is where if you do a dance-a-thon or anything where you're involving a lot of cash, change or dollar bills or anything like that, at the end of the event, uh two members, they have to be PTA members, you don't necessarily have to be board members. Um, they can't be board members, there can be one board member and just one regular PTA member. Doesn't matter, but they have to be members. Go off to the side somewhere where it's quiet and secure and count the money and fill out, if there's checks written, enter the check numbers and the dollar amounts of the checks, count all the coins, count all the paper money, everything up. Then one person counts all the money and then comes up to the total they came up with, and then the other person counts the money, and hopefully they come up with the same dollar amount. If they come up with different dollar amounts, then they have to start all over again and count again and until they get the same number. Just another check and balance. And then both counters have to sign at the bottom of the form. I highly, highly, highly cannot recommend this enough. Each activity that you do, fill out a different form. Because that will make your record keeping when you're preparing your treasury report a lot easier. The way I do it is when I go to the bank to make a deposit, like if I had this form filled out for dance-a-thon, I would have all the money for the dance-a-thon in an envelope with this cash verification form, and I would take it to the bank, even though I had another envelope for, I don't know, the gift shop that was mentioned. So I've got money from the gift shop too. So you count the money for the gift shop and put that on a separate form. So now I've got two envelopes full of money. When I go to the bank and make the deposit, I don't put it all in one lump deposit. I deposit the money separately. The money for the dance-a-thon is deposited separately from the money for the gift shop. Because it's just too hard when you got one big giant deposit. It's like, well, what is this deposit from? And then you have to look at all the forms and it can get kind of messy. So if you're trying to keep track of your actuals, it's a lot easier to keep everything separate. If you do the way I just recommended, when you get that deposit receipt from the bank, staple it to this cash verification form. And that way everything is nice and tidy and all together. If you're accepting cash dues outside of totem, you have to send those into third district. This form will be revised when the $6 goes into effect. Right now it still says $5, but fill out this form. Keep a copy for yourself because this is basically your receipt, and then send a copy of this form in with your check. So when this arrives at our office secretary knows what the money's for, and she can log it properly and give it to me, and then I know because I'll be the treasurer, so then I'll know what your money is for. If you just send in a check for $25 with nothing in the memo section of the check and no piece of paper, I was like, oh wow, okay, so I wonder why Paso Verde Elementary is sending me a check for $25. I guess they just must be really generous. Or I'll have to call the treasurer and say, hey, why did you send me a check for $25?
Okay.
Here's
A question in this chat. If you are using card payments, does that go on a separate form or the same form?
if you're using PayPal or something, is that the example?
Let's see, Denise. Yes.
So if you're collecting your due, this form is only for due. Well, it's for dues and for late fees for your insurance.
Sorry, I
Um,
was talking about the cash verification form. Like if you're using,
oh,
I don't know, we have a swipe, a card that can be swiped for payments or, I mean, different things like that.
right. No, because PayPal produces a report, that the report is your tracking. It's
Okay,
basically
got it.
takes the place of the cash verification form.
Okay, so you might have like multiple forms for one event. Okay.
Yeah, you can staple the PayPal report to if you're trying to keep all your paperwork together for one event, you could keep it all together. Print a PayPal
Mhm.
report and then have the cash verification because cash verification is just for cash.
Okay, got it.
Another question was, what if there are situations where there is not a second counter?
Ugh.
I would guess you just basically, I mean, you make a note of it and try to, I guess, try to find somebody soon after the event that can maybe
Yeah, if you don't have a second person the night of your event, um, and this is what I would recommend, even if you did have a second person, make sure you bring him an all envelope with you, one of those 9 by 11 or bigger manila envelope that you can seal. If there's one of you counting or both of you are counting, um, if there's the one person that's counting, that one person counts the money, they put the form, they sign the form, they put the money and the form, signed form in the envelope, seal the envelope, you glue the flap shut, and then sign across the flap, not the long way, but like right across it, like diagonally, the where you sealed it shut, sign your name. That will look obvious if somebody tried to open it. And then when you find that second person see that the envelope, have them unseal the envelope, count the money, and say, okay, yes, I agree. Um, oh, yes, I agree with the account, and then have them go ahead and sign the form as the second counter as the second person that counted the money at that point.
Okay. Yeah, so you're sealing up the envelope, and then maybe the next day, if the, I don't know, principal secretary or something, then you can go into the office and have them unseal the envelope. So then you're trying to do everything you possibly can to produce a history of doing things honestly and with integrity.
Yeah, well, the other counter has to be a member, so unless the school secretary is a member, just make sure it's another member.
Oh, okay. Good,
So the
good.
principal could do it because principal should be a member.
Thank you.
All right. Here's the workman's compensation. So what was your question on this form? The person that was had an earlier question about the workman's compensation? All right, I'll just go over it. Um, the um the workman's compensation form, it's pretty straightforward form. Um, if you hired anybody that did not carry their own liability insurance, like maybe you had a parent of one of the students who's an amateur DJ, doesn't not a professional business or anything, just hobbyist or just messes around with DJ equipment. Maybe you hire him or her to DJ your dance. Okay, he's not a professional person. He doesn't have his own liability insurance. So the PTA basically extends its liability insurance to that parent while they are quote unquote working for the PTA. So you would have to report on this form the name of that parent, what type of work they did, DJ, the dates work, whatever the date of the dance was, and then check the box. Make it a little bit bigger again. Oh, wow, all right, that's really big. So there's two boxes here that they have their own coverage or they don't have their own coverage. So if they don't have their own coverage, you write down the $50 that you paid that parent. You write that in the without their own coverage in this second column. If you hire a company that that does have their own workman's comp, like maybe you hire, I don't know, I can't even think of an example. Um, I don't know, coffee cart vendor for teacher appreciation. Um, Teacher Appreciation Day. Now, that person is a professional company, so they do have their own insurance. So you would still report their money, but or their what you paid them, but you would report what you paid them in the with their own workman's comp coverage. So that whatever you pay them would not be calculated in your at the bottom here because you only pay for the excess for only the people that do not have their own liability insurance. So, and you have $1,000. So if all you had was that one parent that did the DJing for $50, that's the only person you hired, then that's under the $1,000, so you wouldn't have to pay anything extra for workman's comp. Now, if you paid that parent $1,500, then that would be over, and then you'd have to pay an additional surcharge on the $500 that is in the excess of the $1,000. And there's like a little table that calculates what your what the surcharge is that you'd have to pay. Oh my gosh, it's like 11 after. All right, I'll try to do this really quick. ACH, when you pay AIM, we have an ACH form because it's paid online. We have a form you could use to authorize the payment for AIM. Because insurance is required, you do not have to get it approved. You do not have to get funds released to pay your insurance because you have to pay your insurance or your PTA goes away. It disappears. Yes. Chen, I see your hand.
Okay, yeah, I have question about workers' compensation. After
Okay.
we submitting that report, they are asking to upload the report. I didn't remember exactly what website, but they are asking to submit the report on my PTEZ. So
Oh.
yeah, but our previous treasurer didn't provide any username and password.
Oh.
So when I go in that website and check, try to create the account and password, they didn't give that option. What should we do if we don't have any username and password?
Well, I'm first of all, I'm a little confused what the relationship between PTZ is and the workman's comp form.
I don't know. After I submitting, I received an email that we need to upload the report on that website. So
Really?
when I go and check in that website that we need username and password, that our previous treasurer didn't provide those. I try to create an account, but we don't have that option in that.
Well, let's talk offline about that. There, if you could forward your email to me or to Tom, and we'll talk offline about that because I have no idea. Because we usually upload stuff to PTZ for you for all of our PTAs. I don't understand why the workman's comp form would be having you do that. So let's talk offline about that.
Okay, can you provide your email so that I can forward to you?
Yes, I'll Tom, can you put it in the chat so I can
Yes, I'll put it in the chat.
yeah, so I can keep moving?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, we'll definitely talk more about this. All right, here's some common financial situations. I'll be really fast because I have to leave in like 15 minutes. So gift cards, like I said previously, gift cards are considered as cash. Um, so I get, and I know Tom gets too, we get like a bazillion questions like, can we buy a gift card for our for our Teacher Appreciation Day, or can we buy gift cards for this or that? And no, you cannot, because it is cash. Gift cards are cash. And PTA does not give out cash to a teacher. So think of it this way. If you want to give a $25 gift card to a teacher for Teacher Appreciation Week or for anything else, it's like you're giving her $25 of cash, and you cannot do that. So that's why buying the PTA buying of gift cards is not allowed. Now, I saw one of the PTAs recently. They sent me an email and said we want to buy this PTA officer who has served on the PTA a number of years, who is they're retiring from PTA or whatever. We want to give her a nice gift. Can we buy her a gift card? And I said, no, your PTA cannot buy her a gift card. But if somebody wants to donate a gift card to give to her, that is fine. Business can donate a gift card, or a parent can donate a gift card. So that is my suggestion about buying gift cards. No, you cannot buy them, but you can ask people, businesses and people to donate them. Yeah, and here's the link here talking about buying gift cards. There's so many natural disasters and horrible tragedies. Students getting shot or killed, or just all these horrific things going on. A lot of PTAs are asked if, hey, can you do a fundraiser for little Johnny's, funeral because, he was tragically, killed. And no, I mean, as much as you want to, PTAs are not allowed to do that. PTAs are not allowed to do anything that benefits an individual. PTAs are only allowed to do things that benefit the entire school or student body. So you can organize a fundraiser, you can help get the word out about a fundraiser, but you just can't use your EAN number, your tax exempt number, to run a fundraiser to benefit uh, uh, little Johnny's fund, his burial fund or something. You can participate in relief efforts. You can make donations to relief organizations, like for natural disasters. Because organizations like the American Red Cross or the Salvation Army, or there's so many others out there, those are all in 501c3s. And a PTA being a 501c3, you can only donate to another 501c3. You cannot donate to individuals. And then, of course, your PTA members must approve all donations. Using the donation or money collection websites, you can establish a GoFundMe account as long as all your financial policies and procedures are approved, and the fundraising is for a PTA purpose, not for little Johnny's burial fund. You cannot be for a individual or a family. Because person-to-person apps like Venmo, Cash App, they're not designed for business use, and they're also not protected by FDIC insurance, and usually they're not really that secure. Applications like Venmo should not be used by PTAs. PayPal and Square, because those are business focused applications, and Stripe as well as another one. You can totally use those. There's other platforms out there called Give Butter. And there's another one I can't think of the top of the name. It sounds similar to Give Butter. But you can use all those. Those are approved.
It's a question, what if it's for a group, like purchasing new uniforms for the soccer team?
As long PTA's money should be spent on things that benefit all students. So if you purchase uniforms for the soccer team, then you should also be purchasing the uniforms for your track team and your softball team and everybody. You can't single out one group of people. Or give the rest of the school a comparable donation. Maybe it won't be necessarily uniforms, but about the same value.
And so we could add Square to our budget to have a swipe option to use at fundraisers.
Yes, yes, you can. Yes, you can. All right, using a debit card to pay bills. I think this rule also changed recently too. For many, many, many years, debit cards were not allowed to be used by PTAs to buy stuff because there was no accountability. People just, run wild with a debit card. Like checks, you need two signatures. So with a debit card, it's just one person. I still do not recommend it, even though the prohibition has been lifted on this. I still highly recommend that you use this form to be to capture that second signature. It's called the authorization of purchase on the internet, or any other form that you want to use. And make sure it's also in the minutes that Susie Sunflower was authorized to use her debit card to buy up to $200 worth of food at Costco for the dance-a-thon. So make sure it's all documented in your minutes. So because someone's just running around buying stuff with their debit card and there's no trackability or traceability on it, you're setting yourself up for some danger. Commingling of funds. I've received this question a countless number of times too. A lot of schools, they have their clubs, right? And because the club is not a 501c3 and the school's not a 501c3, the schools are 501c4s, I think, it is a nonprofit, but it's not a tax exempt, it's not a tax deductible nonprofit. So the 501c3 is tax deductible. So a lot of clubs will say, "Oh, so they want the tax exempt status." So they'll say, "Oh, can you hold our money for us?" And no, you cannot commingle funds. The only way you can help a club, but accept their funds is if that club becomes a PTA club, which means that club has to follow the PTA financial rules, policies, everything. So if they're willing to relinquish control of their funds and depend on the PTA to write them checks when they, the proper way, then that's the only way that you can the club that you can hold money for a club is only if it becomes a PTA club. Which means you also have a budget line item in your budget too. Because if that club is going to be raising their own money and everything, you need a way to track the income, and then when they want a check written, you need a way to track where the money is going out. Fiduciary agreements and gifts to school. We're almost done. If you buy something for the school, like if you buy a piece of equipment or buy a park bench or fund the building of a shade structure or something really valuable to the school. Make sure that you submit a fiduciary agreement or gift to school form. Many school districts have their own form that you fill out. And if they do, that's great, fill out their form. If the school district doesn't have their own form, then fill out the PTA's form that I've got an example of here in the slide. The way when you make big purchases like that, the fiduciary agreement make sure it just guarantees that that item will stay with the school. Because if they don't have that agreement, you buy that very nice copy machine or the laminating machine. If you don't have that agreement on file, the school district can say, gee, I think this other school needs a laminator. We're just gonna move it to the other school. It's like, but the PTA raised the money to buy it for that school, yeah. So make sure this form is on file so the school district cannot move it to another location. Last one, babysitting. Babysitting is allowed only if the parents are continually on campus. And the following conditions are met. Babysitters do not change diapers, and there's at least 2 unrelated adults 18 years or older at all times, and there's no coffee or hot fluids around the babysitting room or area. Babysitters may be paid by the PTA, and those payments must be listed on the workman's comp form. And the PTA may charge the parents a reasonable fee for babysitting services if they want. And then lastly, showing movies and movie nights. A lot of schools do movie nights. You must have a movie license because movies are copyrighted items, and movie studios and get really bent out of shape if you're showing a movie without their permission. So there's a couple movie licensing companies. They're kind of pricey. Depends on the size of your school. It's a sliding scale type thing. Depends on how many students there are, and there's a lot of factors that go into it. So just do your homework. Make sure you pick the best one for your school. Some companies have Disney movies and Pixar movies and every movie, and some movie licensing companies only have like certain HBO and things like that. So make sure you pick the right company appropriate for what you want to do at your school. Okay, that is it. Unfortunately, I do not have any time for questions because I just got a text message that my ride is here and they're waiting for me. If you do have questions, please, let me get to the last slide. Here's my email and my phone number. Email me any questions that you have or call or text me. That's my cell phone number. If you have any questions at all, I'm happy to help. I can come talk to your board meetings. If you want, I can, help out with that if you want. I'm just happy to help in any way because it's much easier to prevent a problem from happening than trying to fix it after it has become a nightmare problem. So I'm more than happy to be a problem preventer.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you,
Okay.
Sheryl.
So sorry, sorry I have to run. Sorry we went late, but we had so many great questions. I really appreciate that. And I hope you learned a lot and you'll be able to manage your PTA's money a lot better and more efficiently.
And Sheryl, when you get a chance, if you can email me the slides, and I will
Yeah.
send them out to the
Yep.
people that have sent me an email, which there were several.
Yep.
I'll post them on our website with this recording too.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay. All right. Well,
And the link to this recording will also be saved to our website because it'll be on YouTube. Tom will take care of putting it on YouTube for us.
all right. Well, good night.
All right, thank you.